right at 6, Jason. I'm going to go ahead and start. Is that okay?
No.
Yep, that works for me.
I'll just start reading. Gary, you're my wingman.
You got it.
Okay, to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the Fairfax County Athletic Council needs to make certain findings and determination for the record. It's a bit cumbersome. First, because each member of the Fairfax County Athletic Council is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members are participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and an appropriate volume for all the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you're participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. Jason?
Good evening, everybody. Braddock District, Marsha Pape Daniels. Braddock. Oh, go ahead, Marsha.
I'm in the Braddock District, driving to the Government Center.
Gotcha. Thank you, Barbara. All right, Marsha. Sorry. Braddock alternate, Mark O'Meara. Drainesville District, Greg Beckwith. Drainesville alternate, Brian Lewis. Hunter Mill District, Jeremy Lee.
Adobe Premiere Pro tutorial for beginners. I'm going to show you everything you need to know, all the key features and a ton of video editing tips.
I don't want to know.
All right, I'm going to mute everybody real quick. Hold on a second.
You've already been using Premiere for a while.
Okay. Hunter Mill District, Jeremy Lee. Hunter Mill alternate, Harold Leff. Franconia District, Lisa Mickey. Franconia alternate, Bill Bright. Mason District, Barbara Lowry. Mount Vernon District, Lester Munson. Or Mount Vernon alternate, Bob Kirk.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Providence District alternate, Kelly Ego Oswala. I just saw Franconia alternate, Bill Bright. You there? Oh, looks like you're muted.
I am muted and I am here.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Bill. Springfield District, Mike Thompson.
Yeah, Mike Thompson's here from St. Louis.
Thanks, Mike. Springfield alternate, Mark Hilbrun. Sully District, Gary Flather.
Gary Flather here at my home in Sully.
And Sully alternate, Mark Abbott.
I'm here from Chantilly.
Smart. Diversity at large, Mark Fernandez. Diversity at large alternate, Eric Sohn. And going back to Mason District, I saw Barbara Lowry signed on. It looks like you're muted.
Yes, I'm here.
Gotcha.
I'm here.
Thanks, Barbara. Member at large, Catherine Quinn. Or alternate, Anne-Marie Swope.
Anne-Marie's here and from Reston.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Town of Clifton, Jeff Stein. Town of Herndon, Roland Taylor.
It's Roland Taylor. I'm here in Town of Herndon.
Can you say that again, Roland? Sorry, it was a little low.
It's Roland. My home.
Gotcha. All right. Town of Vienna, Tom Hanton. Baseball Council, Rob Honey.
Here from Centerville.
Basketball Council, Steve Bergstrom. Or basketball alternate, Stu Clark. Fast pitch softball, Susie Williamson. Or alternate, Ryan Buchanan. Football Council, Mark Miana. Oh, Mark was on here earlier.
He said his internet dropped, so he's trying to log back on.
Okay. Football alternate, Ted Hollingsworth. Lacrosse Council, Marianne Wagner. Lacrosse alternate, Dave Paddock. Slow pitch softball alternate, Christine Iddip. Soccer Council, Lula Bauer.
I'm here in Alexandria.
Thanks, Lula. Soccer alternate, Trish Moxie.
I'm here in Springfield.
Volleyball Council, Rob Bailey. And alternate Anne-Marie Swope still here. Women's sports programs, Jenny Cantwell. Or alternate Hillary Richardson. Fairfax County Park Authority, Mike Thompson still here. Kevin Williams.
Here from my home in Fauquier County.
Thanks, Kevin. Fairfax County School Board, Bill Curran.
Here from Fairfax.
Thanks, Bill. Vicki Garner.
Here from Burke.
And Paul Hatcher.
Here from Centerville.
And Neighborhood and Community Services, Lloyd Tucker. Sarah Allen. Keisha Dodson. Karen Navisato.
I'm here from Leesburg, and Lloyd and Keisha will be joining us shortly.
Okay. And Mark Martino.
I am here from home.
Okay, looks like we're good, Lula.
Perfect. So at this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to our vice chairman so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Fairfax County Athletic Council.
Is there a second?
Sure, Mike Thompson seconds.
Are there any objections? Motion is approved.
Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the Fairfax County Athletic Council to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such FOIA usual procedures which require the physical assembly of the Fairfax County Athletic Council and the physical presence of the public cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the Fairfax County Athletic Council may conduct this meeting electronically via Microsoft Teams, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-571-429-5982. Is it so moved?
Is there a second?
Second, that's Rob.
Rob, okay. Any objections? Motion is approved.
Finally, it is next required that all the matters addressed of today's agenda must address the emergency itself as necessary for continuity of the Fairfax County government and for statutory requirement or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Fairfax County Athletic Council lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Is it so moved?
And a second.
Sure, Mike Thompson seconds.
Thank you, Mike. Any objections? The motion is approved.
Great. All right, we will move right along. Are there any citizens here to address the council? Nope. We do have a presentation to the council, a virtual remote meeting participation policy with Jill Clark. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Clark, and I am the Senior Health and Human Services Program and Policy Analyst here in Neighborhood and Community Services. And I also staff the Human Services Council, another board. And I was asked to come today to talk about the changes to the Virginia FOIA law that took effect September 1st. And to walk you through it, right now, all of the county boards, authorities, and commissions are looking at policies to conform to the new legislation. And so I'm going to share my screen and walk you through a PowerPoint I have. Let's see, just one second. And before I start, I just want to say that what I'm going to be sharing tonight is the legislation that was passed by the Virginia General Assembly this past legislative session. And I think that a lot of the boards, authorities, and commissions are concerned about, after 2.5 years, about having to meet in person again. And so I just want to let you know that what this is not, what I'm going to be sharing is not Fairfax County putting in place policies about the virtual meetings or remote participation. It's all hinges upon basically being in compliance with state law. So can you see my PowerPoint? Because I don't see it yet.
Yes.
Okay, you can. Oh, good. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to share is I'm going to go over some of the background about virtual meetings, the new legislation that makes the changes to them, and then talk about what action you will need to take as a board in order to use the all virtual and remote participation provisions in the new Virginia FOIA law. And so just some background. Virginia is a Dillon rule state. And this means that counties really have very limited flexibility in terms of what they can do without state enabling legislation. And this is one of those things that as a public body that Virginia FOIA is what governs public meetings such as yours. And so these are requirements in the new state law. And I will say also that this particular legislation that was passed is quite prescriptive in terms of, like, there's details in the legislation that I'm going to go over that are right from the law. So in terms of how things need to be documented in minutes. And we know that our boards, authorities, and commissions have benefited from the additional flexibility of virtual meetings, since the pandemic started. So what I'm going to go over took effect September 1st, but why you're still able to meet virtually is because right now we are still under a local state of emergency that was declared by the board, and they have not lifted it yet. So once the Board of Supervisors, which we don't know when that will happen, but once it's lifted, then these requirements will take place. And so what the county attorney's office and our FOIA staff did is they put together model policies for boards, authorities, and commissions to use to adopt in order to be in compliance with state law. And part of the law is that public bodies must have a policy in place that's adopted in order to use them. And so, like I said, since the pandemic started, at first it was the state of emergency that was declared by the governor, and then the board and that has been lifted, but we are still under a local state of emergency. So we're still able to meet completely remotely right now. And so what the new legislation covers two things. It covers all virtual meetings as well as individual remote participation by members. And so with all virtual meetings, what the new legislation says is that public bodies like the county's boards, authorities, and commissions can hold all virtual meetings 2 times a year or 25% of meetings per calendar year, whichever is greater. So for boards that meet every month, that would enable them to hold 3 all virtual meetings a year. A lot of county boards take off August or sometimes another month. And so then it would be the 2 times a year. Under these conditions that, first of all, you have to have have adopted an all virtual public meeting policy, and that these meetings, the all virtual meetings, cannot be held in consecutive months. So that'd be something to keep in mind, that a board can't decide like, oh, well, you know, with winter weather can be dicey, so let's do virtual meetings January and February to be safe. It can't be held in consecutive months. So remote participation is the more complicated piece of this new legislation. And so when you think back, for those of you who have been on the Athletic Council pre-pandemic or other public bodies, that, you know, before the pandemic, all meetings were in person. And obviously we had to shift because of the pandemic, but this legislation does provide some flexibility in terms of individual remote participation for meetings under certain circumstances. But one thing to just be aware of is that it still requires that a quorum of members be physically assembled in person. So the circumstances that remote participation will be allowed is a member has a disability or other medical condition that prevents their physical attendance. And for that, there's no limit to the number of meetings that someone can attend remotely. In addition, if someone's family member has a medical condition that requires the member to provide care, there's no limit to the number of meetings that someone can attend. The third one that was added is that if someone's principal residence is over 60 miles, it's a one-way from the physical meeting location. That also allows for remote participation. And so essentially a hybrid meeting where the quorum of members would be physically assembled in a meeting room, and there would be technology which has been equipped at the county buildings to allow for members to also participate virtually. And we do this, for instance, with just county staff meetings, where we meet where some people are assembled together, and then also we have staff who are meeting through Teams. So we do have the technology for that. The other provision is that they allow for a personal matter, meaning that each member can participate remotely 2 times per calendar year. And so that gives some flexibility. One of the things there, just to be mindful of, is that the physical quorum has to be still in place. So, you know, if everyone decides to use one of their 2 personal matter exemptions to participate remotely the same month, then it could be challenging. I know that, you know, my board, the Human Services Council, and then talking to other staff coordinators of other county boards, that is something that we are concerned about, you know, when this does take effect, when our local state of emergency is lifted. And so, like I said earlier, the law is actually pretty prescriptive in the sense that it really does outline how individuals have to go about requesting remote participation. The provision says that it has to be made in writing to the chair. I think that's because this is statewide legislation, and we know that not all counties are resourced the way we are fortunate to be in Fairfax County, where some of our other jurisdictions don't have staff support. And so that was written that way. And what it does is it outlines how you have to go about doing it. So specifying, you know, why you're requesting remote participation. And the reason for that really is because the personal matter, because there's a limit to how many per calendar year that someone can use, that's really the reason. It doesn't require any, you know, if it's because of a disability or because you are a family caregiver, it doesn't require you to submit any independent verification or documentation about it. But it's just, it's really to differentiate because of, you know, that limit on the personal matters. And it does cite that, you know, they want the person to provide specificity of the reason, you know, and like traveling out of state or, you know, something to that effect. And what the law says is that the chair will respond confirming whether their request is in conformance to this policy. And so what that means is it's not approved or disapproved based on a judgment call by the chair, you know, deciding like who's, you know, who they want to participate in person versus virtually. It's really, it's determining whether, like, for instance, if someone has already used their remote participation for a personal matter twice and they're requesting it again, then that would be a situation where the chair would have to disapprove it because it's you know, they exceeds the limit. But in terms of, you know, it's really just conform. It's not about you know, whether the chair isn't making any sort of judgment call about like what the validity of the request. It's just about the conformance piece. And so then for if you do have members who decide to opt to participate in a meeting remotely, once we go back to in-person meetings, and that what you would have to do is at the beginning of the meeting, as part of, you know, right now you have the script for virtual meetings, and so that you wouldn't have to do that anymore if you're meeting in person, but you would have to, as part of your you know, the approval of the agenda and the minutes, you know, that in that beginning section, you would have to have a vote to determine, you know, if for a specific member that the chair's approval or disapproval was in conformance to the policy. And that, and also the verification, like you have done with the virtual meeting so far, that the member who is participating remotely can be heard by all members who are assembled in person. And with the minutes, so the state law does provide you know, specific requirements about how the minutes have to be documented. And so if a member is participating remotely due to a disability, medical condition, or because they are, you know, a family caregiver, the minutes just have to be recorded that the board approved their remote participation in their general location. So it does not have to, there were some concerns from other boards about privacy or, you know, having to, you know, that there would be any indication of someone's, you know, health or medical. And that wouldn't be, it would just say that, you know, Jill Clark was approved to in conformance with the policy and they participated from their home in the Hunter Mill district. That would be it. The where the more specificity is needed is if a member is participating due to a personal matter, and that would have to be cited in the minutes with a specificity. I mean, I think it, you know, there's I think some flexibility in terms of how that is cited. I think it could just be like, you know, a family matter or, you know, personal travel or something, you know, it doesn't have to be go into a lot of specifics, but it also has to document how many times the person has attended remotely, and a general description of their location that they are participating in the meeting from. So that part, you know, they really, when I going back to, you know, a lot of the legislation that the state, you know, passes, you know, it does give some flexibility in terms of implementation. And this particular piece of legislation, they really added a lot of specifics about how things need to be done to be in compliance with Virginia FOIA for public meetings. And so I know I threw a lot of information at you, and you know, just my before I open up to any questions, you know, just what my recommendation would be is to at the next meeting adopt these all virtual and remote participation policies so that you can take advantage of those options. You don't have to take action, but what that means if you don't take action is if once the Board of Supervisors lifts the local state of emergency, that means that your meetings would revert to the pre-pandemic. You wouldn't have the flexibility of having those 2 all virtual meetings a year, or allowing remote participation of members as a needed or situational basis. So that's been something, and just to keep in mind. And I'll close with this, that I think that the allowance of virtual meetings has really had enormous benefits to boards like yourselves. The flexibility. I've been staffing county boards for almost my whole career with the county. And early on, I staffed the Disability Services Board, and we had quite a few members who couldn't drive because of their disability. And, the transportation barriers, at the government center, bus service, especially outside of commuting hours, is very limited. And, it really created a lot of barriers for residents to participate. And then I know just on my current board that I staff, we have members who have young children who've said, like, they're concerned about, once we have to go back to in person, with childcare issues, could be a barrier to their participation. And of course, we have a very government center, Panino, is not central to everyone. And traffic, I was reading this week that traffic has almost resumed to pre-pandemic levels in our area. And so so there's a lot of barriers to coming in person. And, after 2.5 years of doing this successfully, we know that there's concerns, but just know that this is, not the county. This is just state legislation. And if there's concerns about it, what you could do as, individual citizens, of course, is, connect with your state senators and delegates about that, because it will ultimately take state legislation to make changes. But, but in terms of, as far as, I think just if you're feeling concerned about this, or the limitations, just know that you're not alone, and that, from talking to a lot of the other staff coordinators of boards, they feel, a lot of boards are feeling very similar. So at this point, I will open it up to any questions.
Mike Thompson, you
Hi.
have your hand raised.
Yeah, but my questions may not be specific. I mean, they're a result of this policy. I have no issues with the policy. I mean, we met in person before, whatever. I have some specific issues to the athletic council that we need to think about. Back in the day, we had standing rules, and we were told we couldn't use standing rules because because of the requirement that our bylaws be approved by the Board of Supervisors, and our bylaws have our quorum and all that stuff built into it. So, unlike potentially, for example, when on the Park Authority Board, where we were able to adopt this, it's our own policy and away we go. My first question is this something that we're going to have to change our bylaws, adopt that change, and then give it to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the change so that it takes effect, rather than just something where we can adopt a policy and move forward?
Great question. So full disclosure, I'm not an attorney. However, I know that the county attorney's office, when they drafted these model policies and provided them to all the staff coordinators of the many boards, authorities, and commissions in the county, it was, the guidance we were given was to just adopt these standalone policies. That was the recommendation. There was, because I know the board, Human Services Council, similarly, bylaws have to be approved through the Board of Supervisors. So there hasn't been that discussion, but I can certainly follow up and then, circle back with Jason about that to verify. But my understanding is it's standalone policies.
Okay, that would be helpful, only because back in the day when we had some standalone policies, we seem to be told that we needed to do something different. My next question, based on the way this is set up, and I don't know who best this question goes to. In order to allow the remote participation, we typically, like, we don't meet in a room that has great speaker phones and speakers and interaction and video and blah 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 kind of options. Assuming that everybody was willing to be quiet enough to listen to the speaker on a iPhone, is that as long as everybody can say yes, I can hear them, is that able to be deemed sufficient, or do we have to have something else in place in order to have at least an audio option for remote participation?
Good question. So my understanding is that audio is the only requirement in order for remote participation. So the video, so offering like a Teams or a Zoom option is obviously best practice, but in order to meet the minimum of the law, it's just have to offer the audio. I will say that the county has been upgrading the meeting rooms to because with the county's telework posture, where we with it's a rarity for staff who are all attending a meeting to be working in the office on the same day. So hybrid is our norm now for meetings, and so I know, like for instance, Panino, the big conference rooms on the second floor now have the technology to allow for, you have the big screen, and you can hear the person participating remotely. They can hear you, because I've been in meetings recently in that room, and it's worked actually really well. But I know that the board hasn't, the county, using I think some of the COVID federal stimulus funding, has used it to upgrade a lot of the technology in the various county public rooms.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess, Lula, then the only question is, we probably need to actually write the policy up into an actual motion and adopt it. I guess at the from what I'm hearing, we would do that at the next meeting.
Yes, I think that's so. I think it will be shared with you with your meeting materials before the next meeting, so that you can review it ahead of time. But it's standard. It's the same. When the county attorney's office drafted it, they drafted it to meet the requirements, and so every board is just kind of inserting their respective name, and it's the same policy that's being used by all of the county boards, authorities, and commissions.
Okay, because I know that I at least was under the impression that we had modified it at the Park Authority, but okay, just trying to understand.
That's what I gathered, that we would have the opportunity to modify it, but what you're saying is you're going to provide it to us?
So I think Jason will send it out as part of the meeting documents. And so if you do modify it, I mean, this is what the county attorney's office provided was to be in compliance with the state law. So as is, it works, and it's sort of that. I'm not familiar with what the various, some of the boards have done to modify. I would just, if doing that, I would just make sure that Jason, you're consulting with the county attorney's office to make sure that nothing's added that would, affect anything else in there.
Yep, will do. Looks like Gary and Mr. Miana.
Yeah, so this is Gary. I have just a quick question. So if I heard you right, if we adopt this policy, you still have to have a quorum present in person. Is that correct?
You do, yes.
Okay, and then the second comment will just be for Lula and myself, is I am quite certain that if they've upgraded one meeting room, there's going to be, once the emergency state has been lifted, there's going to be a lot of requests to use that one room. So we'll have to figure that out.
All right.
Mark, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. A couple questions. One, when does this have to be done by?
So the law itself took effect September 1st, but it's unfortunately, we don't know what the board's plan is in order if what they're thinking in terms of lifting the local public health emergency. And so really you're fine continuing as is until that happens. And so so even though the provisions took effect September 1st, as long as the county is still under the local health emergency, and my understanding is that they will give notice. It's not going to be like they make a decision at their Tuesday meeting and then all of a sudden tomorrow things, because there's other things that are impacted by the current local declaration that, so there's planning that will need to happen. So
All right, so we don't know.
we don't know, unfortunately. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. It seems to me that the council has got to struggle with adjusting to all of this with the nuances based on some of the answers we're going to get, digest it, and then figure out what is best, or not do it and just go back to meeting in person. I have my own personal feelings, and I frankly, I think we've lost a little bit by not face to face. You never get really to know anybody. However, that's something for the council to digest. I just wanted to know when we were going to get the answers, and I think we're going to need some time to go through this. And obviously, we have time to digest this within the understandable timeframes that you just mentioned. So I lay that out there on the table for everybody. Do I like driving up to the government center? No, not really. But if I'm looking at my position and not being self-serving, I think we got to look at things from the overall, how productive we can be. And I think what Gary brought up, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things about one room with all the toys on it, that's just a disaster. As far as just scheduling that and all that, we're fine with what the minimal amount of presentations we've had. I look back through the 30 years, we've gotten by pretty good with some pretty big deals. So I think we can manage that. So I don't think that's an issue, but I do think that putting all our eggs in one room and all that and signing up on a list is just going to cause all kinds of issues. So that's my my 2 comments and opinions.
Jason?
Mike and Rob?
Yeah, so real quick, just a couple things. One, Mark, I think one of the things that we're going to find is that we'll be given lots of lead time, because when they lift the emergency, it's going to have a big impact. Forget the boards. It's going to have a big impact on restaurants and businesses that are able to get around certain regulatory issues because of the state of emergency. So they're going to want to be able to give those businesses the opportunity to prepare for those changes. So I think we'll have some time. That said, we only meet once a month. We sometimes don't meet in December, which really means that while we say that, we really have maybe 2 meetings to try and get this out, because I don't think we should assume that come January, this is all still going to be in place. So I think we do have to figure it out relatively quickly. Second, in terms of scheduling, y'all, I'm sorry, Karen and her team, we have a set meeting schedule, the third Wednesday of each month. And I've always assumed that Karen and her team schedule it out and make sure that the room is blocked and stuff. So I don't think we're treated the same as an outside group looking to step in and reserve a room on some irregular basis, as if we're just, a random set of citizens saying, oh, I want to have a random meeting. I defer to Karen, but I think that she and her staff will probably be able to take care of us there.
You are saying we're preferred customers?
I'm saying we're an official government body, as evidenced by all the crap we're currently talking about trying to jump through.
If we're talking about our personal property tax or real estate, this would be acted on right now.
Yeah, and I would agree with Mike. I don't think the room will be an issue. We've had it for 30 years, so I think we'll continue to have that. And Jason's gonna, I think he already has some of the rooms already reserved, so we'll take care of that part. So that shouldn't be a worry.
Rob? Rob Honey?
Yeah, Mike stole my thunder on the room and Karen, so that's what I was going to say. But I'll use my time to say I can't. I agree with Mark completely about in-person meetings, and I miss seeing Coach Miana every month. I can't wait to start seeing him again. Talk some football.
Is there any other questions for Jill? All right, thank you so much for attending, Jill, and explaining all the FOIA stuff and all the laws and legislature, because I know it does get a little cumbersome and confusing for folks. So we really do appreciate you attending tonight.
Oh,
Thank
my
you, Jill.
pleasure. Yep, and I'll
Thank
follow
you.
up with Jason to make sure that any questions that you all have can be routed to the right person, probably in our legal office, to make sure. Yes, can I get a copy? Yes, I can. Jason, you have my presentation, so feel free to share it.
Okay, great.
Jill, I just wanted to say that I was so excited when I heard you were going to be here tonight, because I look forward to the day that I don't have to read that script every time we start a meeting.
Yes, I know. It seems to, yeah, that's 10 minutes of your meeting gone right there, right?
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure. Good to meet all of you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So moving right along, Jason, thank you for sending out the minutes. I'm sure everybody's had a chance to take a look at them. So approval of the July 20th minutes. Do we have a motion?
This is Gary. I make a motion to approve as written the minutes.
There's a second.
This is Mike. I second.
Any objections? So moved. I do not have a chairman report, so we'll move right along to the committee reports. Communication with Fairfax County Partners.
So, okay, thanks. This is Gary again. I don't have a formal report. I would like to hear from Karen and Vicky on where they think we're at. I can only speak for my own organization. I can tell you that since our fall permits were issued, my organization has had 64 cancellations. So to me, that's not progress, but I do know, Vicky, I know that you said this is a work in progress, and we have been working with NCS on, trying to accommodate. I have seen multiple emails from Rob Honey on last minute cancellations at the high school level that are impacting. And before I asked Vicky or Paul to speak on the subject, if anybody else wanted to chime in, I'm sure Rob has probably a couple things to say as we try to move forward on these cancellations in the community service.
Yeah, Jason, if it's okay, I'll jump in. So Bill and I did talk, and a couple of those cancellations were due to lack of referees for football games, and football games having to move to Thursdays and Saturdays. So we talked about how we could better communicate that when a closure happens, so that the community users know exactly why they were canceled, so that we don't freak out at the last minute. We did never resolve the Green Day issues. So there was about 5 high schools who are booked Green Days for a couple months until about 6:30. And it essentially, in the baseball world, it changes the landscape, because instead of having the ability to play 2 games on a field in a night, you can only play 1. So I think, Gary, to follow up, I think the one thing that we haven't done yet is we had talked about having a meeting specifically related to high school community use with Bill and Vicky, and I know Bill will take, and Mark and everybody, and I'm sure we'll do that soon. So that's sort of my input follow up.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think with the summer months and missing the August meeting, and we probably need to regroup with Vicky and NCS to move forward on this. I just want to make sure that it doesn't get passed off as all things are good. At least from my perspective, they're not where they should be. I do think there has been some improvement, but most of my cancellations that I referenced have been things that should have been known in, July, August timeframe, not September and October. So,
Yeah, if I can jump in here right now, the Green Days, I'm going to defer to Bill to discuss with that because that's more out of his office than ours. But I do think, and thank you for acknowledging that I said it would be a progress around because it will be. But I do think we're making the headway toward things. But I'm not happy with where we are either. So with the schools, we have done extensive training exercises with the vast number of individuals that are new in our schools. The biggest impact that I see here of the last probably 3 or 4 weeks has been the PTA and their addition to programs and activities that they are now putting on the calendars. And actually, I'm brainstorming and working with the PTA representatives for Fairfax County to see how we can maybe do that a little better, because a lot of these PTAs are not even forming until the second week in September. And then they get together and then they have all these great ideas of what we can do. And by the hierarchy, they do bump our NCS. Whenever they do put, I know. But whenever they do put those issues we are calling and investigating every single one of them. I have a person, Cindy Hall, retiree, that's just dedicated just for NCS and has followed through on all those to call the school. Why is this happening? Did we know about ahead of time? Is this a training issue? Is this preventable? And we talked to the schools and we tried. Now, just today, we got some time back from South County High School. We started a program called Give Back, where I'm asking the high schools to look at their calendars on a monthly basis. And this has gotten quite a few time slots back to NCS. And they're looking at the calendars in real time, not the calendars they created last May, which is when most of them created it, but they're taking a month-to-month review and seeing where they can carve out additional time. So far to date, we've given back almost 120 different hours from different schools where we've carved back time. Some of that has been maybe an hour or two here. That's progress, but it's not where we want to go. So we are making headways. I feel pretty good about some of the work we've done. I think we have a long ways to go to get to where I think myself and the committee would like it to be. But the parameters that we're dealing with, I'm not sure where the exact answers. I'm a pretty much crisis critical thinker here. And the problems that we have is we have a lot of individuals such as the PTA, which are coming in and trying to do the best they can for the kids also. And they're aware, of the issues that goes with NCS, but their needs, where do you weigh the needs? And I'm not sure how to manage that, from that. So Paul, if you have, could you maybe weigh in a little bit on some of this? I think Paul's still on here.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Oh, and I apologize. I'm a little congested, everybody, but no, Vicky hit it on the head. One thing that we are doing too is every time I get a chance to advocate for, I guess we're calling it an activities coordinator or somebody of the like, either in a pyramid or at a school that's helping manage some of this. I'm doing that. I know I saw where you guys have drafted a letter or something to the county board in support of something like that. So we're trying from that end to get any help we can to the schools to manage this better. But yeah, Vicky said that where we are now is really trying to figure out, in the case of the PTA, how do we make them better? Can they form earlier, or do they form at the second week of school like they've been doing, and then put their things on the calendar, which of course bumps. So we're looking at everything like that and trying to come up with solutions. But again, it's still everybody's trying to vie for some of the same space. So that's where we're at. But we're continuing trying to do the best we can, given all of the usage and all of the different people needing to use. I think we've come up with a few different approaches this year, such as the 4 times a year input instead of just the 2, which hopefully will decrease a lot of the cancellations. And then the give backs, and we had about 2 or 3 conversations with our schools this summer, trying to impart upon them, hey, anything you guys have that we can have back, or that won't impact our NCS athletic council friends, please do it. And we're imparting that, hey, if you have something that comes available that day, let us know by 2 p.m. Let us know, because somebody can use it. So we're doing that messaging and getting that out, and we'll continue to do it on the behalf of everyone here.
Yeah, and what Paul was alluding to, just to give a little bit more flavor to it, is the positions that was discussed in our, I believe, July meeting, where we would have a person stationed at the high school level to help with the activities office to manage all usage, and then we'd have a dedicated concentrated person that would be at the 28 different high schools, and they in turn would filter down to all the feeder schools to kind of help with the flow going forth. I think, I believe Ron, I believe Rob, I think you were the one that, was advocating for this also, saying, there's just a lot of work in the DSA's office and the activities, and we could use some more help on the ground. I can manage all I want from the office, from centrally, but really the decisions are being made at the school level. So that's where we have a little bit of deficiency there. But I do think we're making progress. As Paul mentioned, we had, I sent out a notice yesterday. I believe, I know NCS got a copy of it, that I'm setting up target dates for scheduling, which tells the emphasis of what they're supposed to be looking at, the timeframes that they're supposed to be looking at, and rechecking their calendars. I'm sending those out at 4 different times per year, so we can have more of a concentrated scheduling. So I think we will see some progress from that. So it's kind of what I have at this point. I know it's not a complete answer that everybody wants, but we are trying. Thank you.
And I will just chime in from our and NCS. One, Gary, I will assure you that this issue will never get dropped after what we've been through. So, and I will also say that, our communication with Vicki and her staff and Paul has absolutely improved. Vicki is, absolutely fighting for every, especially last minute cancellation that comes in. She shares your frustration. Mark has shared with me, she feels it and is frustrated as well when these last minute cancellations come in. And she is doing everything she can to be an advocate, as well as we are for you guys. And we have, like Paul and Vicki said, we have things set up. We're collecting the data, and yeah, it's not where we want it to be, or Vicki wants it to be this fall, and we just got to keep plugging at it. I know we have a meeting set up probably first week of October with Paul and Vicki to discuss from our level. I know Mark Martino is setting up a meeting with the community user groups to have some sort of forum to discuss some of these issues as well coming up. But we won't drop it. And we know that there are some cancellations that we can't control, but it's those last minute cancellations that impact you, and we're going to keep fighting to get it where we need it to be. So.
Okay, appreciate that. I know there's 4 hands up right now. Just say with the give back program, Vicki and Paul, I think that's a neat idea, and I think it will work. I will say though, giving back, because I've been the recipient of a give back, which helps, but a lot of times when you give it back on a Tuesday night for a Thursday afternoon, you just can't put people together and referees and stuff like that. So, but I'm not sure, Jason, do you know what the order is? I think maybe Mike was next.
Yeah, I believe it's Mike, Lula, Rob.
Thanks. Couple of quick questions. One, in terms of the data that we collect, are we able to collect not only that, for example, Gary, in your case, that you had X number of cancellations where you had time given back, but if we think it's the PTA, is there a way to know before we just go, oh, it's the PTA? Are we able to actually identify, oh, 2/3 of it was PTA, or is it 10 of them are PTA and a bunch of them are one-offs of also different groups? So first, can we figure that out? Second,
Yeah, we can identify all of that now
yeah,
with the data
but
we have.
okay, I think that that would be an important ongoing process, so that we're not, yes, we should, if PTA is number one, we got to take care of number one, but then we should work through number two, number three, number four through that and figure it out. In terms of the PTAs, as somebody that was a former elementary school PTA president back in the day, I just double checked online with the Virginia PTA stuff and their uniform PTA bylaws that they require. They require all the officers of a new PTA to take office by July 1st of a given year. Every organization, every nonprofit that's involved in doing anything with NCS in terms of the youth sports stuff also goes through elections and goes through the process of changeover and in people and planning and everything else. I'm not sure that I'm willing to just haphazardly agree to the idea that a PTA it gets a special, should automatically be treated in a different way where because they take office July 1st, they can have some kind of different impact in the different sports programs in July, August, September, October, November, December, as they just haphazardly make whatever decisions. Again, the sports groups can't do that. It's not like a sports group can come and say, oh, you know what? I know we applied for all these permits, but we decided at the last board meeting to start 7 new sports. So we need fields back from all these other groups in order to support that. So I would suggest that if all of these different nonprofit organizations throughout the county that are doing this work, also, I mean, we all have to go through transitions. So perhaps the thing to do is to look at training up and a process of as it moves from one set of officers to another or whatever it is, but they can do planning during the course of, and I'm not going to keep track of years. So if my daughter's in 3rd grade, it's not like at the beginning of 4th grade we decide to do all sorts of new stuff. You start planning in 3rd grade for that 4th grade year or whatever the equivalent is. So I would just humbly suggest that I recognize the value and importance of the PTAs. I mean, I was on the PTA board at the elementary school for 7 years. I think they're incredibly valuable, incredibly important, and serve an incredibly vital role. But I also think that we shouldn't just give them a pass because they take office on July 1st when we don't do that for all the other groups.
Yeah, they need to follow the rules like everybody else. I think Lula, I think you were next up.
You're on mute. Sorry.
I'm happy to hear that we're making headway, and I'm really thrilled to hear what everybody has to say. But I was listening contently, but it didn't suppress my frustrations. And everybody knows that October is homecoming month, and that every high school has homecoming, and they have typically homecoming a different month. So to get that information after you've gotten your permits, after you've done a complete schedule, is just so incredibly frustrating. And what's also frustrating is that the schools, when they started building dual complexes, they have the stadium field and the auxiliary field, but to get one of them canceled, and you don't really know what reason, and then a couple days later or maybe a week later get the stadium field canceled, it's even more frustrating. And it's really so difficult to keep rescheduling. So I just don't understand how it is that the homecoming dates aren't blocked out prior to the user groups getting their schedule, especially because October is always been known for homecoming. So it's just been very, very frustrating for all sports that are using rectangular fields.
Lula, is this like a massive, I mean, what you're talking about, that's the first I'm hearing of homecoming being an issue, and I haven't heard one issue of that.
It's not that homecoming's an issue, it's homecoming being blocked from your permits.
No, I understand. I mean, but they're doing it after the fact. Were there schools that did that after the fact? Blocked? I mean, they're going to do it, but share with me offline who that was, and we'll remind them. I'll remind them directly that your homecoming date. They don't know it for next year right now, but they're going to know it soon enough. They're going to know their dates they need to do that. So I'll remind them the DSAs. That's a direct DSA one. That's an easy one. They need to block it. They have the dance Saturday. There's a lot happening.
Absolutely.
So they need to do it. So it's a real easy one to solve. So don't hesitate. Anyone on the call, don't hesitate to contact me if you got there. We're not going to be able to change it because they're too late and they were wrong. But I can make sure that it's on their radar, that they're ahead of this. And Vicky's done a great job of doing the reminders a little bit, a much more normal cycle of the reminders on what they should be doing and when they should be doing it. And by breaking it down into thirds and really looking at the seasons in a chunk, that will be and has been helpful. That's another reminder we can put on that sheet just to make sure they do it.
Yep.
That's an easy solve. We can make sure that we avoid that in the future.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll pass that over to you. There's 2 high schools.
All right, let's let Rob speak and then Vicky.
Yeah, so first I want to give kudos to Bill. Every time I have emailed about any of these issues, Bill is on it right away, which is a perfect segue to the letter that Vicky referred to. So I just threw together, I tried to, sort of put together my inner Steve McLaughlin, and I wish I could write half as well or a third as well as Steve could. But just to put together something in support of hiring additional staff for the schools to help support community use. Because I think I know Bill knows, and many of us know that the activities offices, certainly at the high school level, are probably the most overworked offices, staff members in any school. I know Mark Martino can certainly speak to that. So the letter was, something that I think we should consider. Somebody that can write a lot better than I can certainly change it, but it's something that we should consider sending to either the Board of Supervisors or the school board, or whoever we should send it to, because I do think Vicky's office, Bill's office, the DSA offices, activities offices need more support on community use and need those resources. So I just wanted to speak to that letter since it was referenced. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Vicky, you're up.
Yeah, and thank you, Rob, again for reiterating that, because I think that is a needed key that we have to get some of the organization among all the groups. But I just want to make sure I wasn't misconstrued. I respect the PTA tremendously. Around they are the heart blood of a lot of our schools and what they do. So please do not think that I'm blaming them. I'm just stating as a fact of what we've been seeing, because we now get all the cancellations. And there seems to be an uptick in the last couple of weeks of the PTA cancellations due to PTA cancellations. And yes, they do. You're absolutely right. They do have their elections, and they do have their leadership planned in July, but the committees do not actually physically meet, from what I've been told from the PTAs, until after the start of school. Parents raise their hand, parents become volunteers and become part of the committees around, and then they start forming those committees, which is where all the decisions and groups and fantastic student support, but at the detriment sometimes of the NCS crowd. So I just want to make sure that we are working on that. I do think the focus scheduling, as I said, when we first started the focus scheduling in August and July, then August, we probably won't see a full reckoning of the process until next summer, around to where we're getting everybody into the process. And what I mean by that is we came in on the focus scheduling a little short, because we sent out that in August, and Mark can attest to that too. Mark, NCS can attest to that. But as we go through the process for the 4 different targets that we have, we will capture by next summer, next fall, which will be this time period that we're in now. It'll be caught earlier in June and July as opposed to July and August. And I think that will be very impactful, and also line up with the schedule drops from NCS. So, but I do appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate also the kudos from Karen, going through. We are trying. This is not something we take passively. We would not have put a whole position, part-time hourly position, just to focus on this in our office. we're doing what we can, and is it perfect? No. Yeah. Am I happy with the progress? I see progress. Around. It takes a lot for me to be happy in a situation because I'm kind of like perfectionist, believe it or not. Around. And whenever I have this crisis that's connected to my name, I don't like, but I'm trying to figure out how to get this to a better, more manageable state. So, but I do thank you for the discussion.
Lula, you still have your hand up, or is it?
I just lowered it.
Okay. So are there any other questions, Vicky? So there you go. Thank you, Vicky. Any other questions, or Jason, anybody's hand that I don't see? I think I got them all.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any either.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that we need to continue to press forward. I will say that I was at the Sully Community Center grand opening this past weekend, and I was able to speak to several different people, including Stella Pekarski, the FCPS chairwoman, and quite honestly, she was the impression that things were moving swimmingly, and I told her they were improving, but certainly by no means are they have things been resolved. So she is aware of that. And if we continue to work towards this, like Mike said, I think I was a former PTSA president as well, and many years ago. But everybody's got to be held to the same standard. And at some point in time, if this takes a year, which would literally be 2 years from the time we brought it up, a year and a half ago or a year ago, whatever it was, we need to get to a point where they're being held accountable. And I got to reiterate that Megan McLaughlin said it best when she said that if permits are issued and a school forgot to put something on a block, then they need to have a penance. There needs to be some penalty for them forgetting to adhere to the rules that FCPS put in place, the policy, procedure, the 8420, 8421, whatever those rules are. If they're supposed to do something by a certain date at some point in time, for me, I would like to see them be held accountable, because I know my organization is held accountable if I don't follow the rules and the procedures. So I like to think that my organization does follow all the rules, even though I get pushback from my membership, but I make them follow the rules. So I think everybody needs to do that. That's my closing comments. I think I see a hand up. Is that Anne Marie? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to chime in now. Also regarding the PTA, because I was on the board at, in the elementary and in the middle school. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of the PTAs or PTSAs in the area actually know what the process is, because that is actually held with the school itself. And you really had to search for the person who had access to NCS to be able to book anything. What we did to try to help, and I actually worked very closely with the person in the administration office who would do the booking, and we would sit down in June and actually look to see about booking those events that we know that happen every year. All right, and they can do that as the board. And then we would have a board meeting in August to try to figure out again, what does our schedule look like from a fundraising standpoint or any other events. So there could be a process, put in place to help, and yes, accountability should be there. But I think there needs to be a better process in place with the schools and the communication with the PTAs to understand how NCS is done, and maybe somebody in the PTA should become part of their role that works with the school to get those in on the schedule that's set forth by NCS. So for example, maybe the VP is the one who works closely with getting all the events on, the NCS schedule. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just saying that I don't think a lot of people actually know that process or know who handles it. And then they just put this stuff up, and then somebody just in the front office just happens to put it NCS, or they don't. It just needs to become part of their every, board meeting, and has to be part of their process as well. And then the only other question I had is, you said about accountability. We're hearing about all these late cancellations. What's the accountability for all these other people that are canceling at last minute? Is there any accountability? I know we talked about that in the committee meetings, but again, what is the accountability for people that are canceling at a late, such late time for all of you guys? That's it.
I think that's a valuable question that needs to be answered. With that said, I'll just leave it there and I'll turn it back over to Lula. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
Oh, I thought Vicky had her hand raised right at the end. Sorry.
We good?
I did.
Okay.
I just want to say too that I understand about the accountability and the communications, and that's one of the reasons why I am meeting with the PTA so we can build that bridge. Unfortunately, you're constantly building that bridge. I'm not giving an excuse. I'm giving a fact because every year a lot of the PTA members are different around, but we're establishing a lot of different processes with our communications with the PTA, and the NCS is part of that discussion that we're having.
Very good. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move right along with the sports representatives. Jason?
Baseball Council, Rob?
Just two quick things. We got a couple big things coming to Fairfax County in the baseball world. November 15th through 17th, we're hosting a Youth Baseball Summit. We're the leaders from Major League Baseball, USA Baseball, Little League, Cal Ripken, Pony, Dixie, and all the travel organizations will be here for a 2-day summit at the Capital One Watermark Hotel. So we're excited to host that. And then December 8th through 10th, also in Fairfax County, at the Fair Oaks Marriott, we're hosting the Virginia Baseball Coaches Convention for 2.5 days in conjunction with George Mason. So two big things coming to Fairfax County in the baseball world. So we're excited about those. And we're certainly excited about the opening of the two 60-foot fields. Gary and SYA have been playing on it. Travel's been playing on Sunday, the two small fields. The baseball community is extremely excited about it. So great work, Mike and Park Authority and everybody that was involved with that over the last 20 years. Thank you.
Great. I don't believe anyone from basketball here. Fast pitch softball, Susie Williamson.
Susie, I think she's here, but Lula, I think you skipped over the APRT report.
I did?
That's okay. Do you want me to jump in?
I don't see it on my agenda. I'm sorry.
Well,
oh, it's okay.
Yeah, please do.
So the weather's been pretty good. Things are cooking, but kind of to what Karen alluded to about the APRT report, that's the biggest thing right now, going with softball and working with Rob and other individuals in the community. So right now, that is the biggest thing for us in the softball community, is moving forward with that and looking at getting things back to where they should be from the report back in 2007. So a lot of work's been going into that, Mr. Kern and everything. So we truly appreciate everybody's efforts.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Jason?
Next is Football Council, Mark Miana.
Okay, the FCYFL's kicked off. Things gone very well, as a matter of fact. However, the 800-pound gorilla is officiating, as it is for all sports. And we haven't moved in this direction unilaterally as a group here, but it's tough on everybody. The youth leagues, the adult leagues, the high schools, which is a cascading effect, as we know. So that's still very difficult. Also, we made a successful transition from Falls Church High School to Marshall High School to do the age-weight certification, which is several thousand kids. And thanks to the staff at Marshall and Bill Kern, the coordination, that went seamlessly. And it was a very positive experience. So that worked out very, very well. As far as participation, it is up, which is very, very good, by 16 teams. So that's a good thing. So things in that area are moving pretty well so far. I would like at this time, I'm going to use my time to also mention that the celebration for Steve McLaughlin was last Sunday. And it was probably one of the most magnificent events that I've ever been to. And it was held at the Barns at Wolf Trap, as you all got the notice. Marianne Wagner was there. Harold Leff was there. Barbara Lowry was there. I was there. Chris Leonard was there as well. And I represented basically the athletic council on the movement of the Stephen A. McLaughlin Award for the Champions of Character. It was well received, and very excited about that. But it was really a great event and a great send-off. There's a lot of things you can see Steve in the meeting atmosphere, but you see from his life how it led up to it. Just a wonderful experience. What we didn't know was he lost his brother a month before and was meeting with his family to go over how they were going to celebrate his life when he dropped dead at the grocery store, just checking in for his 2-week vacation. So that page is kind of closed from that end, but it was a magnificent, hundreds of people there on a first-class event that was just had a smile on everybody's face. And Steve needed to go out on that kind of platform. And it was really a great experience. And I would like to add, I got the memo on the Champions of Character. Do we know when that's going to be?
Yeah, we unfortunately we can't reserve it until October, the room until October 1st. But we I think Mark put it up on and Jason put it up on the website today, and we're going to start soliciting nominations. It's going to be like in March.
Okay,
So
it didn't have a reference to a month or a date, so I just wanted to know.
Yeah,
is
in
it
the
holding, pending, or
yeah, it's I think it's in the first thing. I think it's on the first thing on the website that there's date to be. It's in March, but date to be determined.
Okay.
We have to actually get
All
the
right.
room, but it's definitely in March.
Okay, that's what I had mentioned. It would probably be, they're retooling it from October to March, and to stay tuned. And I would be in touch with the family. They're very interested in
Yes.
this. So I just wanted to double check on that. And that's it for right now. I have something in the new business, but I'll wait.
Vicky, you got a hand raised?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I heard this right, Mark. You had added 16 more teams to the football. That is fantastic.
It is, we've seen, kind of turn the corner from a downward turn but I think all the positive programs, and certainly I've worked very closely with Bill and obviously USA Football and so on. The parents are much more educated about safety, and I think the edge and the corner has been turned somewhat, not only in football, but in all sports. So the scare is kind of over with, but yes, it is very positive, and we hope to continue.
All right, thank you.
All right. Is anybody on for lacrosse? I don't believe so. Next is Soccer Council, Lula and Trish.
Trish, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. Our participation numbers are up. We're heading into our 3rd week of soccer games for both rec and travel leagues. The weather has been terrific so far. We're a little concerned about the weather forecast for the weekend of October 1st. Otherwise, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything, Lula?
Oh, no.
Okay, gotcha. Volleyball, Rob or Anne Marie?
Hey there, it's Rob. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a few updates. Girls high school volleyball is obviously in full swing now. That'll be going through towards the end of October. Club volleyball tryouts are actually going to start in October, starting with some of the boys going there, and then the girls will follow pretty much. The older girls will follow after the high school season. Some of the younger ones will start a little bit before that. So that's good. For the boys high school league, we had 35 teams this season and over 400 boys that registered in Fairfax County for playing. So a lot of those boys are looking to start interest clubs at their schools and see if they can move it towards the next level there. And I think that's it.
Okay, moving right along, matters of interest, school board.
All right, I'll start off. I got a good and a bad. Let's start with probably not bad, but a challenge. Want to see if anyone, if the group is experiencing some of this as well. We are seeing a ratcheting up of negative behaviors at our events. You might hear my grandson's in the background, so he's playing. So you might hear him hollering a little bit. So I don't know if that it is something that we're seeing nationally, and obviously if you've been reading the news locally, I wouldn't say it's at this critical rate for us. You know, our major events like football games, there's always someone who does something they probably shouldn't do, and we deal with it. But we're seeing it at a little different scale, so we're taking some preemptive measures, basic things, just reminding of what our expectations are coming in. We want to make sure that middle schoolers are accompanied. You know, we're spending a lot of time dealing with middle school students' behavior, and they're unaccompanied. So we're looking at our schools. Most of our schools already require middle schoolers to be accompanied by an adult and supervised by an adult. We're going to do that pretty much division-wide, with the exception of some different policies at secondary schools, where obviously those students attend that school, so it's a little different atmosphere. We're taking some, again, proactive steps. But we are seeing this, and we want to make sure we curb that sort of thing. I don't know if anyone's seeing that out there in their events and the things they do, but it does seem to be a trend that is at a national level. And talking to my colleagues across the nation, they are seeing it at high school events as well. So I do ask, because I know many of you, and I actually have passes sitting here. So if we were in person, I'd be handing out passes. But we'll find a way to get these to you. But many of you attend our events on a regular basis, which I very much appreciate. If there's an opportunity to remind your friends, your neighbors, just remember when we're there to cheer for teams and not act like clowns is really what it comes down to. And that's kind of our message right now, to say it in a more relaxed tone. So I saw lots of heads nod that you're seeing some of this in your events. So we're going to try to curb it. I'll keep you posted on where we fall. So next month, obviously, we'll know more. The good news is kind of mirroring what some of you have said and what Mark has said. We are back to or surpassing participation numbers from the pandemic. So we beat our pre-pandemic participation numbers. We saw last year when our first regular season back, we had the spring season the year before that was very short. That we had the 3 seasons all in the spring. Last year was pretty much regular, but it was the first year back in some form of regularity, and so it was still irregular. But over the last year and then into this year, we've seen our numbers reach definitely back to where we were prior to the pandemic as far as participation goes, and exceed in areas. Our track teams are blowing up. They are up by huge numbers across the county, across the entire county. Football is back to where it was before the pandemic. It didn't, we kind of had a whole freshman class that came in that never walked in their school building, and that can be intimidating enough, much less going to play football in the late winter and you've never ever even walked in your high school. That was kind of a lost class for us, that we did a lot to work with them, but those were really low numbers within that class frame. And then we had several players, and I wouldn't say hundreds, but we had several players who did leave to go play somewhere else. Some high-end players that did that to go play somewhere else that was moving forward with a regular season when we had shifted our season. So it's good to be back where we are. We saw actually some growth. We generally run between 3,000 and 3,300 football players, and that's really a barometer for us, because that's the one, and that we can tell if that starts dropping, we can get concerned about other sports as well as we're watching their numbers. That number is back up to that 3,000 level. It went as low as about 2,600 during the pandemic over the last 2 years, but that's up to that 3,000 plus number. We had a shortage of helmets. We were vastly short on helmets this year, even though we recondition annually, we buy annually. We had schools that were scrambling to get their hands on additional helmets because they had so many freshmen. Their freshman participation was so far beyond what it had been in previous years. So similar to what Mark is seeing on youth level we're seeing at the high school level, and that's a real positive. And like I said, then our track, our cross country programs, all of our programs are bursting at the seams at this point, which is a positive. That's all I have though for tonight. We're midway into that fall season, except golf, which is in district tournaments now. So golf is wrapping up, which is typical for golf, but everything else is about mid-season right now. So I'll have more to report in October as we get towards the ends of those seasons.
Very good. Thank you.
I will hand over to Vicki or Paul. See, I know they've covered a lot of the information. They probably came tonight, but I want to make sure they have an opportunity.
Well, thank you for that. Bill, I hate to put you on the spot, but can you address some of the green days that was brought up earlier?
Not putting me on the spot. We don't have green days. There's no such thing. Rob Honey's making it up. Just checking to see who's awake. Yeah. So we're
working on it.
We're working on it. We've reviewed it with our DSAs. We've asked them to revamp the out of season practice policy. I met with our new superintendent as well, and I asked her, and I shared this issue with her. I think this group knows where I stand with regards to multi-sport participation, that I am a believer that needs to be our focus. I think we put too much burden on with our student athletes with consistent focus on green days and these other things. I don't have unanimity or even a majority that believe what I believe necessarily among our schools, from our principals to our DSAs, but they do see that our coaches in particular trying to keep up with everybody else around them. Coaching year round is taking a toll, and our average tenure for coaches is dropping. So that was identified. Our DSAs are working on a revamp of the policy that specifically tightens this back up and addresses it. And our superintendent, who has set a very high bar with her expectations for our division, which I fully support. And I am very appreciative that she's come in with that mentality and that attitude, and very much understands athletics, having been a former athletic director and coach and athlete herself, has said, get this done. And so we're working with the DSAs to get it done. So we are solid, in a much more solid place. I do ask some patience on it, as I do have to be collaborative. I can't just issue an edict on this. They do know what the expectation is though. So we're working on the one-offs where they stand now.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to reiterate, we're not where I want to be. We're making progress. Our communications with NCS, I think is phenomenal at this time. There's not a day goes by that I don't have multiple communications with that office. And my team has even more frequent than I do. But we're not there yet, but we're definitely making progress. We're looking at it from a multi-tier or multi-directional approach from all different angles, from the user end to the providers, to the schools, to the individual that actually puts in the schedules, to the decision makers. So we are looking at this from multiple different angles. Paul, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, just one thing. Thanks everybody for coming together again. One of the things that we're going to be trying to track a little better this year is, and you guys were mentioning it, is participation. I'm a numbers guy, computer science degree, but when I hear there's 16 more football teams, which is awesome, and 400 more volleyball, and everybody's growing, we're not adding fields, we're not adding spaces. So what we're going to look at more in depth this year is year-over-year participation growth, and how that's affecting the space usage, and if that growth is having an effect on cancellations. We're going to look at that a little bit harder this year.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and move on to Park Authority.
Yes, this is Kevin Williams. I am currently acting in the division director roles. That's why I'm here today. But Jason, thanks for popping up our athletic field improvement projects. I'll give you a quick status update on the handful we have here. Patriot Park North, Rob's favorite spot, and Gary's as well. We are currently about 75% completion of the entire park. Obviously, we have the 260 foots open, and the 490s are in progress, and we're Still delayed on some lighting, so I think there's some supply chain issues there. But still on target for this winter or opening in the spring. Moving down to Great Falls Nike #4. That's a resurfacing project that just recently started. And they have ripped up the turf and should be getting some new turf down on that shortly. And targeting a reopening in October or November. Langley Fork, fields 2 and 3, replacing backstops and the sideline fencing. And that'll be again late fall. Lewinsville, field #1, same thing, same timeline, late fall. Rolling Valley West, field #1, backstop and sideline fencing. That is complete. We have Winterset Varsity, field 1. That is a renovation of the police administration building. Irrigation will be installed before the reopening of the field. And that's looking like fall of 2024. Cunningham, that's the school and park field. That's side by side. Both fields are having irrigation replacement. Hopefully finished by spring. Scott's Run is the one next to the firehouse, a new synthetic field, 180 by 220. And we're hoping to see that around this time next year or winter into 2024. And then South Run District, all fields are having an irrigation replacement, currently undergoing same time frame as Cunningham, spring of 23. That should be complete.
And Kevin, I got your other attachment. Let me pull it up. Hold on one second.
Okay. And we have a couple of school fields that we've been doing some minor improvements to that Jason's going to pull up. And a lot of this is diamond related currently because we're in our season of infield renovations. But Cub Run Elementary School, with the blessing of SYA, we've skinned the 2 grass infields out of the 2 main fields there. Just so it's all dirt infields, and we're cutting out field #3 that was sodded over by the school system a couple of years ago. We've gotten permission to cut that back out for a dirt infield. Flint Hill, same thing. We're cutting out, skinning the field, cutting out the grass, and making it entirely dirt. Westbriar Elementary, we're actually sodding the infield in the base running lanes. It's got a severe slope, and we're washing away tons of infield mix off of the field. So we're going to try a reverse approach and sod the running lanes and leave the bases cut out. And hopefully that can cut down on the erosion issues there. Leaf Center is another skinning of the traditional grass infield. Thoreau, same thing. There's 2 traditional infields there. We're cutting out the grass and leaving dirt infields. Holmes Middle School, the 90-foot field, that has a pretty bad bowl across the whole infield. It rains and it sits there for days. So we're going to rebuild the entire infield, regrade it, put down new sod. Lewis High School, rebuilding the bullpens for the baseball and softball fields. And Oakton High School, rebuilding the bullpens for softball and addressing the high use areas between dugouts of the 90-foot field. And that is the Park Authority update. Any questions, please let me know.
Yes, I had my hand up. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
The Scott Field next to a fire department, which fire department? Where the hell is this field? There's a lot of fire departments.
Mike, do you recall offhand? I'm trying to picture where it is. It's
What district is it in?
It's up in the Tysons neighborhood. I'll look it up for you and see if I can get it before we get off here today.
Okay, I'm just curious because it's got a big field, turf field going in, and I had a question mark on there anyway, so I never heard of it.
It's a proffered park or field that's coming to us. We're not developing it, so we're kind of out of the mix of it, but we're sort of involved from the spec and standard perspective and
Yeah,
timing.
I'm well aware of the proffered fields in that area over there.
Yeah, so I'll try to pinpoint it for you. I've got a map somewhere.
All right.
Yeah, one other thing that I want to just mention to you guys about from the Park Authority point of view. The baseball complex going in on time, when it is, all that stuff, that's really good news on a lot of fronts. But one thing that you all need to know about a lot of the projects we're having to deal with right now is that costs are significantly higher than were originally anticipated. As you all can probably imagine, for all sorts of different reasons. But the Mount Vernon Rec Center, for example, it's going to be much more expensive than was originally thought. There are a lot of projects that the Park Authority wants to do, was hoping to do, whatever. And some of those projects are being pushed off. Funding is, if $1 million only covers 3 things, whereas before it might have covered 5, that has a pretty big impact. So I wanted to alert everybody here, just to let you know that project after project is coming back as being more, significantly more expensive than anticipated. And we've chatted about this a little bit before, but just as folks are thinking through their hopes and expectations and desires for new complexes, new fields, new stuff, just be aware that everything has become more expensive in terms of the budgets that are coming back. Kevin can, he may be able to cite specific example numbers, but I was just thinking about the fact that, we were kind of lucky about the timing with the baseball complex. I mean, it kind of all timed in kind of perfectly with when the contract happened and things were locked in and that kind of stuff. But just everybody should be aware that things are far more expensive, and I would anticipate that with interest rates and inflation issues and everything else, that we're probably going to be dealing with those kinds of things for at least a little while.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. And can I share my screen real quick just to answer Mark's question on where this is?
Sure.
All right, just a quick share. Here's the schematic. It's Station 44 in Tyson's. This is the firehouse that's going in, and the field is going to be to the west of it, and that is located right here at 123 and the Beltway, Tyson's Corner, Scotts Run Fire Station. I can zoom in for you. Here's the
Good.
fire station. The field's tucked in by the Beltway.
Okay, thanks. That's just what I wanted to know. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. Any questions? All right, let's move along to neighborhood and community services.
Okay, not much more than what's been talked about, just working on the APRT, which target date to report out to the board is December 1. So I would imagine next meeting we'll have a lot more to report out on that for you guys. And then champions of character. And I wanted Mark Martino just to share with you, he's working on putting together a community meeting. And so at you guys' request. So Mark, you want to say a few things that about that you're doing with that?
No. We're putting together, the first thing we're going to do is meet with all the powers that be, FCPS, school security, police, park authority, make sure that all of the heads have what on their agenda they want to talk about, whether it's field usage, whether it's trash, whether it's school security, whether it's why permits go this way, that way. And then once we get that settled, we're going to reach out to the community users and we probably will do it over Teams because we think we can get more people involved than trying to have it at a location and have people go there. Kind of like we did for the pandemic, I think, when we met with the health department, it was easier to get people that will join in. And this won't be a specific based question, like it won't be a meeting to where I'm just going to pick on you, Lula, where Lula will say, well, I have a problem at this field. That's not what it's about. It's more of a general, here are some topics from the school system, topics from the park authority, topics from school security, topics from the police, topics from NCS. Here's what you do. If you have questions, here's where you go to. But these are the things we want to cover so people understand the process that we go through.
Yep. So, and that's all we got from NCS.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to mention is that I would like all of you all, I see Lula and Gary and all that. Please make sure that you're reaching back out to your coaches and asking them to look at their permits, because what we've happened sometimes is that like you'll get a permit and a coach will get a permit. I'll say, okay, I got every Wednesday night. So I know that every Wednesday night I got practice 7 to 9. Well, on the next calendar, like I'm just making it up, in October, there's a Wednesday night that's blocked out because of an event that was already located in there, whether it's school, and then the group shows up. So we're having that happen a little bit. And it's just because people are creatures of habit. They know they got Wednesday night, they see it on their permits, they don't check their calendars. So just a reiteration to your coaches and stuff to really look at your permits and each day to make sure that there's not a block out, so they don't show up at a gym or at a field or someplace that there's already an event and that we have issues with, because we've had a little bit of that, and that happens every year. It's just a reiteration. So that's it. So if you would do that, that would be awesome. Really appreciate it.
I will definitely send that out to the soccer council group.
Looks
Thank
like
you.
There's a hand up, Bill. You have your hand up?
Hi. This is Bill Bright. This might not be specific for you, Mark, but you mentioned this community meeting. Does that have anything to do, or is it related at all to at one point, there was a best practices committee that we had put together? I know we had one meeting, we were talking about how to collect information about best practices for groups. Is that your community meeting related to that effort at all?
I think it's a little different than that, Bill. I know what you're talking about. This is more about field usage and gym usage and stuff like that. But I know what you're talking about. Yes, I think it's a little bit different than that.
Okay. So then in old business, I'd love to ask about the status of that best practices committee.
Okay,
And, I saw a note in the chat from Bill Curran about the stadium bathrooms being approved. Did you want to speak on that real quick, Bill?
The funding for the stadium bathrooms was approved in the school board budget and the board of supervisors budget. So plans are already done. Permits are pulled for 2 schools, I believe. I don't know exactly when construction will start, but the intent is that in a fairly rapid succession, and rapid for the school system is end of summer next year, maybe. We have the remaining bathrooms in place on the stadiums.
Sweet.
Thank you. That was a joint effort by the Board of Supervisors and the Fairfax County School Board, and this body directly influenced that commitment. So that was a huge win for this group.
That is great. That's so awesome. Okay, moving right along, new business. Mark, did you have?
I did. Just a quick item. I want to be assured that we're going to make an agenda item next month on the rules of the council meetings. Is that going to be on the agenda? I didn't hear it, that it was.
Yeah, from what I understand, it will be, because we have to discuss it, and it may take a while to discuss it, but as we're discussing it, we are going to continue to go virtual.
Okay, so I didn't hear anything or you say anything about it was going to be an agenda item.
Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to. I'm sorry, Mark. I just figured that.
I mean, I don't know who else would put it on there as an agenda item if we don't. It's our meeting, Mark, so we develop it. I mean, what we talk about. So I just want to make sure that we have it scheduled, so we put some time and effort into this. One way or the other.
Yeah. I thought it was a given. My apologies.
You never assume.
Well, I'm learning the protocol, Mark. I just thought it was a given. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Last thing is, might be a good idea administratively, Jason, if you reach out to all the current members of the council to have them update their profile, meaning their contact information. You know, in some cases, we probably haven't gone over a few in a long time, and maybe numbers changed or whatever. Just an administrative exercise, because when you need to get a hold of somebody, you just want to make sure that information is current. That's all, just an admin.
Yep,
That's
sure.
it.
I can send something out for everyone to update their contacts. No problem.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Any other new business? Okay, old business. Bill, you're going to bring up.
Yep, same question. If anybody has any update on that best practices committee, are we still moving on that? Is that gone? Haven't heard anything for a few months.
Yeah, good call, Bill. We'll take a look at it. My guess is it fell through the cracks a little bit, to be quite honest. I mean, I don't have a better answer than that. So we'll take a look. I think we have a list of committee members, and then we'll see if we can get that thing kind of pumped back up again.
Fair enough. That's why I asked. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Who's that?
It's Mike.
This is Gary. I second that motion.
Any objections? So moved. Meeting is adjourned. See you next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, guys.
See you.